Howdy, this is Mackenzie Franklin from SideGame LLC here in Colorado Springs, Colorado. We're continuing the top 100 board games of all time list, numbers 50 through 41, the 2023 edition. If you haven't subscribed to the channel already, please make sure that you do. It is the best way to help us grow. And for those of you already subscribed, thank you so much for the continuous support. Let's talk about the best board games. Starting off with number 50, number 36 last year, this is Anachrony, a game set in a post-apocalyptic future as you are doing worker placement in two separate areas, one in your home base and the other on this toxic planet. A meteor has come and sent some material that allows time travel, so you've got a vision of the future that means you must evacuate because a bigger meteor is coming. You're going to do worker placement in these areas, collecting resources, building buildings, and trying to fulfill your escape condition to score a huge amount of points. Now, my favorite part about this game, though, is the way the worker placement evolves as you play. As mentioned before, you're going to be building buildings, and they're going to go into your home base, and those become new worker spots for you, but also on the main game board, there's a turning point in the center of the game where the cataclysm actually happens, and you'll take these little X tokens on the bottom here, put them on the board, and instead of having to pay a cost for going to a space you now get bonuses for entering that space. But if you do, that space can no longer be used by anyone for the rest of the game. I love this because the bonuses are worth going to, and it may take you off course just to get this insane extra action. It may give you twice the efficiency. It might let you do an action you never even thought you could in the first half of the game, and they're so cool because it's also a end game timer trigger that's tied into it. You either are going to end the game at the end of the round when everybody's escaped, or when all the spots have been used up through this bonus action system. So that's my number 50, Anachrony. My number 49 goes to Arkham Horror, the card game. You play as investigators on a large campaign taking on the Cthulhu mythos. You'll do this by constructing a deck and then going on scenarios, and in these scenarios you'll be playing items, events, assets, cards as you move your characters around and you're fighting the mythos phase. And the mythos phase is going to populate enemies, cards to stop you in your tracks, and eventually a timer that'll run out, so you got to make sure you're completing your objectives before it does. My favorite part about this game, though, are the cards themselves. Every time you play, you'll construct a deck and take it against the enemy encounter deck. This encounter deck is thematic and matches whatever scenario you're playing, but your deck is also equally thematic based on whatever class you are and the tools that you decide to bring along. And we've just finished a Scarlet Keys campaign recently, and I played Baseball Bat, and this is a great demonstration of the thematics at work. If you use Baseball Bat, you get extra attack value for the attack, and it does extra damage, but if you hit a skull or an auto fail, your bat breaks. It's a wooden bat, of course it's going to happen. But if you upgrade your bat, you now have a choice when it breaks. So you can either do extra damage and critical hit, or you can return it to your hand and then play it back later. Maybe you find another one, you scratch it up, you grab a stick, whatever. Love the thematic integration on not just the enemy cards, but the player cards and how they tie perfectly into the gameplay mechanisms. So that's my number 49, number 29 last year, Arkham Horror, the card game. My number 48 goes to Detective Club. This has you playing as liars and truth tellers who are trying to convince everybody that you know what a secret word is through these crazy looking clue cards. So the way it works is one person will give out a clue to everybody but one, and then they'll have to use cards to describe what that is. For example, say it's spaghetti. Clearly this person here with a spaghetti monster knows it's spaghetti. But then this person here with the rose might be like, I chose the rose because it's spindly like spaghetti. Sure, whatever. Everybody's gonna think this person's lying. Maybe they're not. Maybe they actually knew the clue and their cards were garbage. And that's my favorite part about this game. The cards and the way that you have to use them to convey a message. And right before you have to start explaining what's going on, the person who gave the clue is going to reveal that clue to everyone. So everyone's going to know, okay, I have some time to think about how I'm going to make sure I relate this. And if you had bad cards, it may just seem that you aren't telling the truth. It's amazing. I think this takes this traitor mechanism and puts it into an experience where the cards plus the players have to do equal lifting weight, and I love that. So that is my number 48, new to the list, Detective Club. My number 47, also new to the list, is El Grande. This is an area control game where you're going to be putting out your caballeros into different regions of Spain. You'll be placing them around the king and also moving the king in order to gain points at the end of each round. You'll use a card initiative system to determine which cards you're going to draft, and the cards you draft allow you to actually place your characters on these different areas on the board, but are also paired with a special ability. Now, my favorite part about this game, though, is the Castillo, and that's this large castle over here. Now, generally, you're going to be placing around the king, and then you can see there are some points that you can earn at the end of the scoring rounds there. But the Castillo is always an option where you can place your pieces, and if you place them in the Castillo, right before scoring happens, we score what's in the Castillo. So if you have stuff in there, you're going to score points just like you would any other region. If you have the most, you get 5, then 3, then 1 for second and third. But then you take this little disc, this dial, you spin it, and then that determines where all of your units that were in the Castillo are now going to go. So it can disrupt the scoring that's happening on the board and make some big swings happen. I love the mind games that come from this, and they even use this wheel in tandem with those ability cards that you see during the drafting portion that are going to allow you to actually take your actions on the board. And there's a lot of creativity that's done with that wheel, but this Castillo mechanism is always an option and another thing you've got to consider when you're going for this area control. It's a brilliant mechanism. That's my number 47, El Grande. My number 46, number 38 last year is Terraforming Mars, an engine building game where you play as corporations on Mars. They're going to be playing out these cards in front of you, trying to gain as much incremental bonuses as possible over several generations and use those bonuses to help terraform Mars. You're going to be putting out oceans, increasing the heat, increasing the oxygen, and when all that has happened, the game is over at the end of the round. Whoever has the most points wins. My favorite part about this game, though, has to be the cards and how you acquire them throughout your experience. Now, the way that we play is generally through the drafting variant, where at the start of each round, you'll get 4 cards. Normally, you just draw 4, but in the drafting, you take 4, pick 1, pass 1, and then you'll have a hand of 4 when you're finished. But after that happens, those cards aren't necessarily yours. You have to pay for each of those cards that you want to keep. So normally, you pay the cost of the card here. So these rad suits are $6, but each card you decide to keep is another $3. So if you want to keep all 3 of these, that's $9. That's the equivalent of almost completely paying for one of these cards. So each card you're taking is an opportunity to not play something else, and it sucks so much when you're just completely filled with cards, or you see a bunch of cards that you want, you just, oh, it's so stressful, but it's the good kind of stress. I love this decision, this hard choice of prioritizing the different cards and having to make that choice at the start of the round before you even have the opportunity to play them. For example, you get this Rad Suits card, but it has a condition that there has to be 2 cities on the board, and maybe there's no cities on the board. That's a pretty easy choice, maybe, unless you have cards in your hand that let you play cities, or maybe that's your whole strategy is you're trying to play some cities, so maybe this card is pretty good to keep. This magnetic field generator is amazing, extra plant production, and gets you some terraform rating, but you don't have the energy right now to play it, but maybe you will in the future. This is an amazing choice, and it's something that makes this game stand out. I love the cards, the different types of cards, as well as the actions that can come from them. This game is so cool and thematic, the way the cards are integrated, got flavor text, artwork to boot, and the artwork is hilarious as you go through them. That's my number 46, Terraforming Mars. My number 45 is Vabanque. This is a small filler game about getting the most money by managing tables at a casino. Now, the way the game works is every single round, you'll be placing a chip somewhere. And it goes clockwise. Everybody places one of their chips, starting with your small ones, then going to your bigger ones. After you place all your 5s, then you'll start playing your cards. One of these cards is a bluff, one of them's a ×2, and one of them's a trap. If an opponent ends there, then you get the money they would have. So everybody's scattering these chips, scattering these cards, and then everybody gets a chance to move. You move 0 to 4 spaces clockwise, and you're going to end up on one of these casinos with these chips. And based on where you are, you'll flip all the cards where you're at, and if you made money, if there's no trap there, you get all the money that was at that casino from the center there. But if somebody has a trap, they get your money instead. This is a really weird game to sort of visualize, but I think this is the best picture that I can find of it. But as you play this one, my favorite part is the player-controlled chaos of this. There's no randomness in the game. Every single thing that happens is based on the players, where you're putting your money, where you're putting your bluff cards, and then the reads that go into trying to figure out what's going on are amazing. You're thinking about every single aspect, looking at your options, trying to bluff with your own cards, and if you can make your way to your multiplier, but also potentially get somebody else's multiplier, it is such a rewarding feeling, and it's one that you got to give a try. Not a lot of people know about this one, but you need to give this one a try for some pure player-driven chaos. That is my number 45, Vabanque. My number 44 goes to That's Pretty Clever, or Ganshan Clever. It's a roll and write game where you're going to be rolling up some dice, and then you'll pick one of those dice and place them in front of you, and everything that's lower than that die goes into this silver tray here. So you'll do this up to 3 times, marking these boxes and playing a bunch of mini games with a bunch of overlap on these mini games. For example, if you wrote this 4 in this orange, it gives you a bonus die, which you can cross off to copy any of the other dice. Or if you complete one of these rows and columns in this blue section, you get another bonus, maybe a 6 in purple. So you're mixing and matching the different mini games and trying to score optimally in all of them, because there's a fox here that's going to give you bonuses for whatever your lowest scoring mini game is. So it benefits you to play in everything. Now, my favorite part about this game I already sort of discussed, and that's the dice system. I love this simple choice of, do I take something better right now, this huge number, but then get less choices later, or do I take low numbers now to ensure that my future turns are going to give me better options? It's such a small choice that carries over through the entire series, with just a change up of the mechanisms and the bonuses. There's 4 different versions of this game right now. I think the third one is my favorite, fourth one is my second favorite, this one is my first favorite, and then the second one is my least favorite. But all of them are games that I will play all the time. This has to be this high on this list because it's a game that I play constantly. I bring this with me on planes. It's my go-to small roll and ride experience, and it's done so brilliantly. It's satisfying to get the different combos, and it is a beat your score game, but the entire experience is rewarding. That's my number 44. Number 73 last year, That's Pretty Clever, or Ganshan Clever. Number 43, number 32 last year, is Terraforming Mars Ares Expedition. This is the card game only, well, not really, version of Terraforming Mars that we talked about earlier. This combines a couple of things, though, for some other games, namely Race for the Galaxy, where you're going to be using these phase cards in order to determine what actions you can take. And these are going to be things like playing specific colors of cards, whether it be production or actions or events, or spending your resources or triggering production phases. But the thing that makes this one stand out is the fact that it has such an amazing solo and cooperative mode. The solo mode here has some push your luck mixed into it because the enemy AI is going to be shuffling up these phase cards, and then you're going to have to try to predict and plan when those phase cards are going to come out. They'll have a stack of 5, and they're going to run through all 5 phases, so you're playing your own phase cards as you would in the normal game and trying to predict and make sure to combo whatever they're going to be playing so you could be as efficient as possible. And then the cooperative version, only you and your other player are going to be playing phase cards. So you're having to talk, communicate about what's going on, and there are even ways where you can switch cards between each other to help benefit each other's engine. Just like in the original Terraforming Mars, you're going to have a corporation that's going to give you some special ability, and then it's good to make sure you cooperate to help each other's thrive. And I think this is so awesome, the cooperation that is present and the fact that these game modes exist. So Terraforming Mars Ares Expedition is my preferred way to play for solo and cooperative, but if I am looking for competitive, I'll probably choose the original Terraforming Mars, but the cooperative and solo are the primary ways that I do play this. So that is my number 43, 32 last year, that is Terraforming Mars Ares Expedition. My number 42 goes to Great Western Trail, Argentina. Number 47 last year, this has you playing as cowboys who are traveling along a rondel, this continuous path, the Great Western Trail. Every time you go through, you'll be stopping at buildings, using this deck building system to play cards in your hand to trigger effects of these buildings until you make it to the end of the trail, where you'll dump your whole hand, look for matching cows, make a sale, and be able to get some additional points and resources, and then start back at the beginning of the trail. My favorite part about this game is the way the game evolves. When you start the game, you'll have a completely empty trail. You'll have a couple of neutral buildings, some of these farmers that you can help out, but as you play, you're going to start building buildings yourself, as well as the other players. So it starts to become a lot more cluttered. There's spaces that you want to go to, spaces you want to visit, hazards you want to clear off, and these farmers that you can assist to gain additional income. You have so many choices to pick from. It's up to you to decide what's going to be the most efficient and what path you're going to take. In addition to this, you'll also, with the new Argentina version, be able to increase your train, which will give you new exit points so you can even skip huge portions of the trail to go for those sales as soon as you can. Now, the reason I'm talking about Argentina instead of the just second edition version has to do with some big changes that occurred. I still like the original second edition. I think particularly with the expansion, it's going to be the way I like to play, but this one adds 3 big things to it. First off, it adds an additional resource in the form of strength. All your cards now have some multi-use functionality, as you can use them to help out farmers as well as supply other actions and then gain additional characters on your little board here. You also have that 4th character, the farmer, who can actually go on your board, and that's going to generate you a new resource as well, the grain resource. And that ties into the last part, the delivery system. When you deliver now, you have an additional phase before you sell your hand, and that has to do with the deliveries that you've made in previous turns. You can use grain in order to move them from the tops of these areas to the bottom to gain additional bonus points, money, additional resources, and compete in some endgame scoring that ties to your different objective cards that you'll be collecting. All these additions make it just a bit more thoughtful of what you're doing and allow your buildings as well as your plays to keep all these new mechanisms in mind, and opens up this game space, in my opinion, of course. So that's my number 42. That is Great Western Trail, Argentina. And my number 41, closing off this section of the list, is my number 88 last year. This is Seven Wonders, 2nd edition. So in Seven Wonders, it's a drafting game where you're going to have your own civilization in front of you. You're going to be comparing pretty much everything and working together and against your neighbors, so the people sitting directly next to you. You'll be taking a card, passing, playing that card, and using it in one of three ways. Either play the card outright, tucking it under your board in order to build your wonder, start constructing for additional points or powers, or you'll discard it for some cash. Now, these cards that you're collecting are things like science, military, or one-time effects that are going to generate you economy or straight points. And that's one of my favorite parts about this game, is just how good every single card is. Every card is a tough choice. From that hand of cards that you get, you have to pick only one, which hurts. And then with that card, you have to decide what you're going to actually do with it. And you want to play everything. And I love that. And then when you get to the second age, it hurts even more, because you'll have these symbols on a lot of your cards which provide linking bonuses, which completely waive the cost on most of these cards. For example, if you want to play this card with this tablet, if you just have a library symbol, then you don't even have to worry about those additional costs. You can just play that for free. But what if you have multiple of those cards? Or maybe you don't really want to invest in science right now. Or maybe you do. It's such a great choice. The fact that everything is valid, but you're always racing for something and making a tough choice throughout your experience. This has a huge resurgency, mainly because of the Leaders expansion. I'll talk about this more in the reflection, but the Leaders also gives you an additional phase and additional cards that give you some direction, which I appreciate greatly. I had never played with the Leaders expansion before, but in the new 2nd edition, they released a lot of expansions alongside with it, so I figured, hey, let's get these for the library, and they have been hits. All of them. Leaders, Cities, Armada. I've been swept away by the different combinations that these expansions have, how easy they are to integrate, and after playing them a couple of times, how clear the iconography is, and the new strategies that are present are things you'll still be diving into game after game after game. Super impressed with Seven Wonders, and it's a game I'm going to continue to come back to. That's my number 41, Seven Wonders. So that's it for this section of the list. Let's go into a quick reflection. Starting off with our new to the list games, we have Detective Club, which I was super impressed with. This is a Dixit style game, and just the fact that you're always engaged and having to do that acting on the spot, or maybe you're not acting and you just can't tell the difference. What an amazing sensation. You also have El Grande. This was introduced to me by my friend Dan over at Chairman of the Board, and he recommended this to me for a long time, and it did not disappoint. I'm going to give a shout out to my friend Wade, who showed us his copy and taught us how to play, and I was smitten. This is one that I had to search out, and luckily I was able to find a copy. Shout out to my dad, John Franklin. He was able to find one in Nebraska for me, and when he came to visit, he brought it with him. Oh, so what a guy. Thank you so much. Padre, you're the best. And then next we've got Vabanque. This has just been a huge hit. This one I'm going to give a shout out to Tom Vassell over at the Dice Tower. This is a small game that he consistently recommended. I saw that it was available at Board Game Bliss in Canada, and so luckily the shipping wasn't terrible to get down here, and then I also was recommended this by Dan again over at Chairman of the Board. So all hits. Dan has been crushing it with his recommendations, and the chaos here is so good. This is one of my new favorite filler games, period. It's one you gotta try. This is one that not enough people are playing. We'll go ahead and close off this reflection with the biggest movers, starting off with Arkham Horror, the card game. This one had the biggest drop, going from 29 to 49, but I don't think it's really that big of a deal. It's still in this high range, in that top half, and Arkham Horror, the card game, continues to be one of the campaign games that I'm excited to play because of the shortened experience. That being said, it is still a campaign game, which means that these one-shot experiences are going to be played over it, but I do think that this stands out with that deck building and just how much variety and theme is plugged into this experience. And then for the big jumpers, starting off with That's Pretty Clever, this one had to go up. The fact that I play this all the time and I enjoy it every single time, I honestly was considering bumping this to a 10 or pushing it even higher down this list. It's been a consistent hit. Every single version of this game is one that I enjoy, and I take it almost everywhere when I go traveling. So That's Pretty Clever. The other big jump was Seven Wonders. As mentioned at the end of this video, we talked about how the new edition came out. I was able to get some of the expansions and just started playing it more and fell in love with it all over again. Seven Wonders was one of the first games that I played with when I was getting into the board gaming hobby. So I was playing Yu-Gi-Oh! A lot, and I had a whole bunch of store credit. I had like $500, $600, and the store had a bunch of board games. So I was like, let's just do this. I'll just use all this, buy a bunch of board games. Seven Wonders was one of those, and it got played frequently. But now getting back to it, revisiting it with expansions, leaders, I was so impressed. The fact that I had never played it with leaders, and I still enjoyed it back then, but this has brought it to a brand new level, giving you more options, an additional phase, pushing extra economy, getting special abilities, and those tie into the expansions too. This is so good. I love Seven Wonders. Simultaneous play, drafting where every card is great. They're things I love from all sorts of games. I think I just really like drafting games, and this does it perfectly. That's Seven Wonders, jumping from 88 to 41, well deserved. We'll go ahead and close the video there. Thank you so much for watching. I'm curious to know, what are yours 50 through 41 in your personal collection? What did you think about the games that I talked about here? Do you agree or disagree with my picks? What are your favorite mechanisms from these games? I'd love to hear what you think. But thank you so much for watching. SideGame Strong.